Welcome to the video for Lesson 7 of the Trust Faith Study. In this lesson, we're going to talk about trusting God's plan for our vocations. It's going to be an opportunity to talk about how all of the vocations provide us with a unique way of being able to grow in holiness and mission. And we're going to look at how in whatever we're called to, there's going to be a great opportunity to grow in love and self-gift through whatever vocation God has in store. So Holly, let's take a look at the tone of our group as we come back from the last lesson.
So at the last lesson, there was a lot of vulnerability, maybe not necessarily shared, but I guess I mean more like they experienced personally some convictions and some areas of sin in their life, and they went to reflect on that. So when we're coming back together, we're aware that there's been, a lot being processed, a lot potentially of heavier topics that they're wrestling with. And maybe we've even had a chance to have some one-on-one conversations where we've been able to teach and accompany and supplement whatever wasn't covered in the lesson that they needed help with. But we definitely want to, again, open with just a place for them to share whatever is on their heart, whatever they're learning in their examen, the things that they're learning in their relationship with the Lord, because this is the last lesson and we want to strengthen that fellowship still together. So taking time to share together the ways we're growing, the things the Lord is illuminating, because we're getting ready to end.
Mm-hmm. So this lesson looks at the vocations from the perspective of trusting in God's plan in our lives. That's going to look different with different age groups and different states in life. So maybe talk to us a little bit about how we can navigate that with different age groups.
So for our younger crowd on campus, a lot of them are trying to determine their vocation. They're studying, they're maybe dating, and they're in that season of life where there's a lot of opportunity. They want to make decisions and plan their life. So this lesson can help them, just inform them of what the vocations are and what's available, because maybe up to this point they've only considered marriage, and we want to shed light on all the vocations. For other groups that we might be leading, they're already in their vocation, they've already committed to a permanent vocation. And what we see beneficial as leaders for those participants is it's informing and maybe repeating for them things they might have forgotten about the beauty and the truth of that vocation, as well as equipping those participants to help others in their life who might be discerning vocation. So it's giving them like a language and a framework around it that they might not have up to now.
Mm-hmm. And this lesson is not primarily about discerning one's vocation. Right. So we should be clear about that, although there is a section that touches on that a little bit. But it's primarily about being able to see how each one of the vocations is a unique opportunity, a unique path to holiness, and to be able to live out the call to self-gift.
Right.
And each of them in its own unique and equal way, being able to take us on a different journey towards holiness, but and yet all of them a beautiful way to be able to live out that call to love and that call to self-gift.
So we have a section I noticed on attitudes and anxieties. Can you talk to us a little bit about what happens in that section as we're leading it?
Now, of course, I just said that it's not about vocational discernment, but at the same time, it's important that we do touch on that a little bit, especially just in light of some of the attitudes that we might want to have as we're trying to adequately discern a vocation and be prepared to be able to respond to God's call in our lives. So we're gonna talk about just some of the different ways that some attitudes that we can have that will help us be more open to being able to discern God's will, and also some of the anxieties that may come with that, the anxieties that may come with looking at the different vocations and things that might cause us concern. Not that we need to be concerned about any of them, but that we can experience this anxiety as we're trying to discern that and trying to look at, well, then what is actually the goodness of God's plan in each one of these, and being able to overcome these anxieties so that we're completely open to whatever God might call us to be living out. So, of course, for those who are discerning, these are all really helpful tools and dispositions that we want to talk about. But for those that are already living out a permanent vocation, your religious life or you're married or priesthood, it's still helpful to review these. I mean, they're helpful for anything we might discern in our lives. We're never finished discerning, God's will in our lives, even if we have our permanent vocation. Mm-hmm. But also, it's helpful if we're going to be journeying with people who might also be going through that process of discernment, whether that's people in our family, friends, fellow parishioners, people that we're ministering to. We have an opportunity to go on mission to help them find God's will for their lives, and so it's important that we know how to help them navigate those attitudes and anxieties.
I love that section, especially because some of the common, attitudes that might be present are actually obstacles to them trusting God and to having
Mhm.
a full openness in their discernment. So I really love that we cover that because it helps our participants as we leave, this gathered time of these lessons, go out with that framework, go out with that healthy attitude, that healthy disposition in their discernment. So it's
And
really
again, we're going to
instrumental.
bring back all these principles that we've been learning throughout the whole study. Are we're just going to be able to apply them here again, of
Right.
looking at God's goodness and the goodness of His plan, and looking at His transcendent authority, and knowing that He really knows what's best for us, and that He knows how to that we are meant to live. What does ultimate perfection look like for me,
Hmm.
and what He's calling me to? So we're going to be able to take all those things and now begin to apply them again to this very particular area where it can be difficult to trust, but yet we're called to complete trust at the same time.
That's great. At the end of the lesson, in your leader's notes, the practical application, you'll see that we provide some really they call it vocational discernment starters. So just a lot of resources and ideas to help your participants, especially those on campus, to consider and to look at those resources. And obviously paired with the exercise of the examinative consciousness
Mhm.
in kind of the going from here. Another tip we'd suggest, we were thinking like, what we leave you with as you go from this study and they go on to commission potentially, that you would maybe consider pairing some of your participants from trust into another study together, if it's possible, as a way of continuing the fellowship that's been developed here, that they could, build off this momentum and be put into a group together, if not continue kind of all together. Another way that you could end this time together is to ask them, like, how do you guys see, what do you see as possible in terms of growing our fellowship and strengthening one another in our journey of trusting God? Some participants kind of self-organize, like they start a bit of a share group or a texting thread where they're holding each other accountable, and there's all kinds of like creative ways that they can do that in their life.
And we've hopefully formed such a beautiful bond of fellowship through these lessons, and there's been a lot of sharing, a lot of openness and vulnerability. So it is really important to try and find ways to be able to continue that connection. These can be the bonds that really help us as you go through the ups and downs of the spiritual life. It's and we've talked in previous studies about the importance of fellowship and the importance of having those people alongside you, who can sustain you in your journey, and that you can also be that sustaining presence for as well, to help them along. So anything you can do to be able to encourage the continued fellowship of this group that you've worked so hard to build, is going to be a really great thing to help them move forward in their spiritual lives.
That's great. So with that, that's the end of the Trust Faith Study series.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe. We really hope that you continue to journey and lead into commission, and see you again on those videos.